Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to the fifth lecture of logistics management. We have picked up a little pace up till now. I guess maybe you felt that. I want to cover more material in this lecture as soon as possible so that we can actually cover the complete logistics management, or maybe complete the most important chapters of this textbook that we are following. All of the lectures that I've delivered by now and the lectures that I would be delivering belong to this textbook. That is what I would be following mostly, unless I specify otherwise that this part or this portion of the lecture is from some other source or material. And so it would be good for you to follow it as well. In the last lecture, actually, we were discussing certain activities, the activity mix of primary and secondary activities for the whole process of supply chain in order to understand, in order to have a better understanding of the supply chain process. Now, primary activities that we basically discussed was the customer level of satisfaction, because that level of satisfaction is directly associated to the total cost that is added to the whole supply chain or logistics process. Greater level of satisfaction you are targeting, if you are setting your standards very high of customer satisfaction or customer value that you are trying to give or create, higher would be the cost, and lower level of satisfaction would result into a lower cost, or lower standard of customer services would result into lower costs. Then we also discussed the transport facilities, that in terms of transport, the mode of transport and the freight consolidation aspect, and these are very important for any supply chain process. And then we discussed inventory management, that what type of inventory to keep, what type of warehouses, what would be the location of those where the inventory would be stockpiled, what should be the design of those stockpiles, what goods to place first and how they should be stocked is important, and that again depends on the type of the product that is being produced. These things are associated from the aspect of availability of raw materials as well as the supply of the finished goods. So inventory needs to be managed in both the cases whenever it is required. Then it again depends on the type of the product, whether it is perishable or whether it can be stored or not, in what type of environment it needs to be stored. All those aspects are discussed, and along with product handling and other aspects with in terms of inventory management. Then we also discussed the information flow and order processing. Order processing is actually the thing which where the whole thing starts from there, and once the order is placed, the process of production and all depends on that. And secondly, we would also assume that forecasted demand is somehow an order placed, in which the demand is for that placed order is predicted in the future, that this order would be placed. So the whole thing of inventory management and the transportation and customer service, these are the primary activities. Now, I also specifically mentioned that the primary activities that we are considering right now are the part of most of the supply chain processes in across the board, but then there are also secondary activities which are either in the supporting role in the supply chain process or might be primary in certain cases. In that case, we discussed warehousing, for example, materials handling, we discussed purchasing and protective packaging. Now, warehousing might be important in certain cases. It might be a primary activity for certain industries, it might be a secondary industry, or just in the support role for other supply chain processes, because in certain cases they have to maintain large warehouses and large stockpiles of raw material as well as the finished good. In certain cases they do not, and same goes for example, product handling, materials handling and packaging, because certain materials need to be packaged to protect their date of expiries, for example, or to be careful in terms of how they are used, and same goes for materials handling also. I gave you example of, for example, acid batteries, for example, Atlas and Excite batteries that are like used for cars and trucks and vehicles. And these batteries are required to be handled carefully in terms of their raw material contains acids, and when in concentrated form, acids might cause human injuries and damages and even life-threatening cases. And so Further, their storage is also very important in terms of inventory management, materials handling, as well as packaging, and as well as transportation, because the acid that is being stored might react to certain other elements, so it is carefully stored. And same goes for example, petroleum industry. I also gave you this example that in case of petroleum industry, the petroleum products need to be transported, and that is also requires specific set of skills and specific type of material handling, as well as packaging, as well as warehousing. So it depends on the industry and the product to product. And we also discussed purchasing, because how much to purchase in terms of raw material from supply side, from supply management in terms of for example raw material. Now that would be that at what time that is required, in what quantity it is required, because if an industry is following just in time management, then it would be required to have a large warehouse for that. But so no requirement of large warehouses, but in certain cases large warehouses have to be maintained. So then in that case the purchase of the raw material would be dependent on the size of the warehouse that you are maintaining and the size of the inventory you are managing. So these secondary activities might become primary for certain types of industries and would not be primary for other industries. Now continuing with this lecture, we in terms of discussing the supporting activities in terms of supply chain management or the logistics process, the last two supporting activities that we need to discuss are product scheduling and information maintenance. I also forgot to mention that I discussed in terms of inventory management that it adds time value to the total customer value, while in terms of transportation it adds location value to the total customer value. We'll discuss that again later on. So product scheduling actually defines specific aggregate quantities that are to be produced and supplied, sequence and time of production output, that in what sequence the output is to be produced and within what time frame it is to be produced, and schedule supplies of production and operation. So the whole product scheduling processes goes on from the scheduling of supply of raw material to the production process, as well as to the output that is to be produced. So it depends on when the raw material is available and what is the date of the delivery of the product. So the whole product scheduling is very important aspect for many industries, because if it is an order based system in which when the production process only starts when the order is placed, so that would be different. They would only have to meet a certain time frame within which the product is produced and delivered. But when it is a regular activity, for example in case of Dawn Red, or for example in case of Head and Shoulders, Procter and Gamble's Head and Shoulders shampoo, those products are supplied regularly. When they are supplied regularly, certain type levels of inventories are maintained in the warehouses, in the storage facilities. When those facilities are maintained, we need to keep the stock at a certain level so that the production process does not stop. And similarly, a single facility might be utilized for multiple products. There might be a single facility producing two types of soaps, for example. One is, for example, a bacterial soap and anti-infection soap. The other one is a normal soap, but we might use a single facility for that production line. The material mix might be different, but the assembly line might be similar for both of them, or maybe the packaging facility might be similar for both of them. Maybe the production line is different, but in the end the packaging is done by the same facility. In that case, we need to schedule and time the production in such a way that output is produced when the output is required, and also specify the aggregate quantities that are required. They are usually produced in batches, and what type of batch is required when. So that is an activity that is very important for certain processes, supply chain processes. Then another important aspect is information maintenance. Now information maintenance actually supports all the logistics activities. Why? Because information is the key source from where everything originates. Once the order is placed, that is an information that floats from the point of contact with the customer to the point of production, and from that information, further information is generated through the point of production to the point of supply, where the vendor is contacted for supply of raw materials, where inventories are tapped. Based on that information, inventories are tapped, that how much material is required for production and how much finished good is already available in the warehouses. And And secondly, information is also related to availability of you can say already existing stocks in terms of finished goods and in terms of raw material. So this information is the most important aspect of the whole supply chain process, where it is continuously flowing from one end to the other and then going back. So for example, demand forecasts are initiated from the other end of the customer support, or for example the marketing end or sales end, and that goes back to the supply raw material supply side, where the materials are collected. So the whole logistic process depends on the information about the quantity, about the timing, about so many other aspects. So that is why it is important that what information is being collected, how it is being collected, how it is being stored, and how it is being manipulated to extract useful information out of it, that what is necessary and what is to be done, how it is to be done, and for whom it is to be done, and what is the time domain in which it is to be achieved. So information maintenance is one of the secondary activities, support activities, which actually is consistently moving along a supply chain. Then there is data analysis, that how the data is analyzed, because in many cases, in many cases, the demand forecasts are necessary for the production facility as well, and for the supply of that finished good to the end. And let's assume, for example, specifically those perishable items. There are like items that are being supplied in the stores which have more than around 2 weeks to 13 weeks date of expiry. Now, how much of that quantity is required in a specific store, that is information of prime importance, because if more is supplied, then that would add to the cost, because they would get expired and turn back to the industry or the manufacturing site themselves itself. That would again bear a cost of reverse logistics. But if it is supplied in shortage, that would mean that the customers might switch. So it is very risky for the firm to provide in short supply. Then there must be control procedures of the information, because in certain cases the informations are confidential as well for the sole survival of the firm. And secondly, how the information is disseminated and to what level the information is disseminated, and how, because information is to be provided in such a manner that the receiver of the information should be able to interpret the information in the best and most optimal manner with minimal effort. That is the main aspect. So if information is provided in a very raw form, then for example, if demand forecasts arrive, demand forecasts are very comprehensive data. If demand forecasts arrive and that is exactly sent to, for example, without conducting any analysis or without manipulating that information, it is sent exactly to the production facility. Production facility would not be able to comprehend how much that information is and how to extract the relevant information out of it. And if that information is sent directly to the suppliers of the raw material, they would not be able to supply the raw material based on just how much that product is required in the market, or in the finished good is required in the market. So based on that, it is very necessary that information is processed, and there are control procedures through which what information goes to which quarter, and what type of information goes to which quarter, and what type of information is to be given to the top management, middle management, or the lower management. So again, I repeat that information maintenance and its collection, its storage, its manipulation in terms of data analysis is very important, and it moves, it supports and moves along the complete supply chain process. Now, the main difference that I have been highlighting as we went on, I highlighted that the main difference between key and support activity is that the primary activities that we discussed are a part of every logistics channels. When I say key activities over here, I guess that is a typo. It should be primary activities are almost in every logistic channel, but secondary activities are part of or might be primary for certain supply chain channels and might not be part of or might be secondary or in supporting role, and even in certain cases might not be part of like the whole process as a whole. So, but the point is that these activities contribute a significant cost to the total cost of logistics. all of these. If we segment the cost of logistics into different based on these activities, the transport, the inventory management, the warehousing, the customer support, all of these contribute towards the total cost of logistics. Now, the most important aspect of the whole supply chain process is the customer order processing. As I mentioned earlier, that customer order processing is the point where everything starts. Either the demand is forecasted, that is again somehow the order placed, and then in case of order-based production system, then that would be again the case in which they place the order and the process starts of production. Production process starts. So the customer order processing and the mechanism through which it is transmitted is very important aspect, and that it is critical customer service loop. Why? Because to deal with the customer is the most important aspect of any business entity. To how the order of the customer is processed is the most important aspect of any business entity. For example, if a customer places an order, the product is transported. So in that sense, it is that is why it is termed as the critical service loop. So the key activities that we discussed, like for example the inventory management, the customer service standard, as well as transport, and these key activities are part of the critical, they comprise together, they comprise the critical customer service loop. Now, what is the importance of the whole logistics process? The main important aspect is that about 12% of world's GDP internationally was basically based on the cost. And similarly, about 10.5% of GDP of USA was basically the cost of logistics. So cost of logistics actually contribute a lot, or a major part, a significant part of the total cost of producing goods and services. Once the good is produced from raw material to the point where it is supplied, now logistics is a major part of that. Since it is a very significant part, it is very important. As we discussed in the start of this lecture, or this series of lectures that we're discussing in terms of logistics management, I highlighted the theory of comparative advantage. Now, what I specifically mentioned was that firms or the economies specialize in certain goods and services that they have the lowest opportunity cost of producing. Now, for example, as I said, that Pakistan might specialize into textile industry. If Pakistan was specializing in textile industry, they would only specialize in textile industry as a single good, if in a two good environment there is clothing and food, so that if they can export that cloth and they can import food against that cloth that they export, and that imported food is cheaper than the food produced domestically. So that is how countries would specialize. Now, once countries would specialize, if the transportation or logistic costs are very high, in older times, why items could not be transported across the time? Number one, technology was not existing, and secondly, the cost of transportation was very, very high. Now, if the cost of transportation is too high, that would result into economies not being able to specialize, because whatever they produce domestically would be cheaper in terms of whatever the product is imported. So they would not gain from that trade. So the only main source is that how lower is the cost of transportation from one economy to the other economy, and that would play a significant role. But still, if that cost is lower, the total cost of logistics across the globe was predicted to be 12% of the total world's GDP, which is a very big amount. So that would mean, as the trade is expanding across the globe, the cost of logistics per trade is decreasing with improvement in technology, but the total cost of trade, in the total cost of trade, the cost of logistics actually contribute a lot. And a range of 40 to 30% of sales for individual firms is the cost of logistics, like from 4 to 30%, sorry. 4% is a low figure obviously, and 30% might be in certain cases in which is, so logistic cost is a significant amount of the total cost of the good being produced and supplied. And it can also be very high if we consider the supply of the raw material as well inside it, because that is also a logistic cost. Currently, the last two figures that I discussed were cost of delivery of those goods, but it can be as high as 70 to 80% of sales if purchasing and production are included. the cost of if the logistic costs of purchasing and production are included, then it can be as high as 70 to 80% of the sales of the cost of sales, which is again a very significant figure. If you look at this table which is appearing in the screen, if we categorize the logistic cost into transportation, warehousing, order entry, administration, and inventory and carrying, then if costs are represented as percent, the first column lists the category of logistic cost, the second column lists as the cost as a percentage of sales, and the third cost lists the cost in dollars per centum weight, that is around for example 100 pounds of in weight, 100 something like that, some centiweight. Now these estimates are by Davis and Drum 2002. Based on their estimates, they found that the transportation cost was 3.34% of the total sales. Warehousing cost was 2.02% of the total sales. Order entry was 0.43, administration was 0.4, and inventory carrying, the cost of inventory management, inventory carrying was 1.72% of the total sales. Now these accumulate up to 7.65% of the total sales. Now in this, if we consider it approximately, on average their estimates were that the logistic costs are 10% of sales without the purchasing costs. On average they are 10% of the total purchasing cost, but if we add 1/3 more of the supply cost also, because raw material is being purchased, so that would mean that the logistic costs are one of the major cost contributing segment of the total production of the price of the product and total production cost of the product. So that is why it is very significant in nature, and that is why logistics management needs to be taken very seriously, because 10 to 20% or 10% or more than that is the cost of supplying the good and getting the raw material. Then why logistics management is also more significant, as I discussed in the start of this lecture, globalization contributed a lot. With globalization, with expansion of businesses, firms started to locate in different regions. There might be 2 or 3 choices. I guess that discussion comes up later again, but it would be important to highlight in the customers are demanding more of the supply chain. Now why the customers are demanding more of the supply chain? Because of technological improvement, because of internet revolution, because of globalization. All these things result into you can say people's expectations going up. Because we said that historically people would live around their where the goods are being produced. Why? Because it was difficult and it was technologically not possible, and it was very costly to transport goods. That's why the consumption basket of a typical individual was very limited, very small. But with globalization, with advancement in internet, with you can say with social media and print media and electronic media, latest trends and fashions are available to everybody. People know what is being offered in UK or USA or Brazil or China, what is being produced over there, what goods and services they are using. So they expect more. Once they expect more and they want to consume those goods, then they are expecting more from the firms. Once they are expecting more from multinational firms and other firms, they are expecting more from the logistics system. Why? Because if I want to place an order of something that is not available in Pakistan, there are often certain course textbooks that we need in Pakistan, we need over here, but they are not available. What we do is we go to a store. There are 2 options. Either I go to Amazon or something like that and try to find that book and arrange that book from UK or USA or any other developed country or some other place where it is available. Or I can go to a store and for example I can ask them, request them to arrange that book for me. The process would be same. Now they would also arrange it from someplace else, like from UK or USA, or maybe they would again place an order on my behalf on Amazon.com. But the point is that is my expectation from the logistics system of current time, that I can order that book and expect that book to be delivered to me by the time I need it. I would place an order on urgent basis if I need it, like in 7 to 10 days. I would place an order on not on an urgent basis if it is needed for example 20 days, 30 days, because in that case they define the time period. Because if the order is urgent, I would ask them to send it through air freight. That would cost me more. But if I have time, I would place that order through shipment. Now that would reduce the total cost of the book that I'm purchasing. But the point is, what I'm focusing is that customer expectations are going up, because they, number one, they desire quick response. I want a product from UK and I want it here now, right? And with that, on the other end, there are multiple types of products that I consume off the shelf that are imported products. Right? So there are imported toothpaste, there are even imported cereals. Now cereal has an expiry date on it. It's quite, I mean, there is a quite a large span of time in which that would expire. But the point is that cereal has an expiry date on it. Now those cereals are also available. Those are imported cereals. So that would mean that my expectations from the supply chain process are going up. I want quicker response. Now, if I place an order on Amazon or on eBay or any online store, I expect that item to be in my hand. That is possession value, to create the possession value. Once the item is in my hand, I can use it. That is the possession value that has been created in one, which is one part of customer value. So the point is that I am expecting a quick response. The second thing is the desire to mass customization. Now, more and more people are expecting to have custom-made products specifically made for themselves. I have certain examples for that. For example, Dell computers. You can go to a Dell website. You can select the type of a laptop or a desktop that you want. You can select the size of the processor, you can select the layout, you can select the, for example, the size of the hard disk that you need, what softwares are required, or what hardware, for example, what graphical drivers are to be installed, what graphical hardware is to be installed. So all these things can be customized for me. So I want a customized product now. Rather than going and buying a laptop off the shelf, I don't need, for example, you can say 80, maybe 1000 GBs of hard disk. I don't need 1 terabyte. I need, for example, only 500 GB of hard disk. Now I would order that online. For you, you might order it for 1 terabyte, and I would order the same laptop with 500 terabytes, with 500 gigabytes. Now, the point is that this is customization. This is customization. We want customized products, and we are expecting a lot from the logistics management, because when we place that order, that is an expectation. Rather than making that product and placing on the supply on the shelves, now they have to wait. They have to wait for my order. When that order is processed, they have to deliver it on time. Right? So this is again expectation. Same goes for LL Beans. It has shops on physical locations, the mortar and brick stores, and then it also sells customized clothes, even online. You can go over there and you can select for yourself that these are my dimensions in certain ranges, not in everything. So they are selling clothing based on customized options of individuals. So again, customization results into more expectations. And then, very interestingly, there is a national bicycle industry in industrial company in Japan. Now that company has 11 million variations over 18 different models of road bikes, racing bikes and mountain bikes. Can you imagine, like 11 million variations of 18 different models of 3 different broad types of mountain bikes, road bikes and racing bikes. Now that would mean that I can go online, I can customize my order, that this is the type of bicycle that I would need, and that bicycle would be specifically made for me, and that bicycle would be delivered to me. Now this is the mass customization and an expectation from the supply chain process. My order would be placed, the information would flow back. That's why I said that information is very important. Now, it is even more important in this customization scenario. I place an order, that information that is specifically tagged to me would flow to from the point of contact to to the production facility, they would place order for the raw material, or maybe they would tap the inventories for that, and then they would manufacture that, and then their product would be delivered to me on the committed time period. Since I want a quick response, so they have to have an effective supply chain process. So now looking at this, this is a historical graph from 1992 to 2002 by Herb Davis and company. Now they conducted a study on 3 parameters. Order cycle time, that what is the time to, for example, order is placed and to delivered, right? Which is the green line over here. You would need to see the left side scale for that, which is number of days. Then there is product availability, which is the percentage of total orders, that is on the right scale, right y-axis, from 82 to 96%. That has fluctuated over time. That would be, I guess, the brown line. And then there is product availability as percentage of line items. Now, line items are booked items, and how much product was available as a percentage of the line items. Now all these parameters, these 3 parameters, represent the customer expectations, customer service performance criteria. These are customer service performance criteria. Now look at these fluctuations. The order cycle time has come to, for example, from 92 to 2002 with now do consider that during this, for example, these 10 years, the types of products being offered, the level of customer satisfaction has changed, the type of products that are being offered has increased a lot, and the market that is being served has increased a lot as well. So that would mean that across this time, if the product was not available in Pakistan in those times, now it is available from 1992 to 2002, even today is like 2000, even further than 2002. But the point is that there has been evolution across on all dimensions. So we must consider that a change from 8 days order cycle time to 8 days, that is a mass improvement. Then there is product availability and line items that has increased to almost 95%, right, with only an error of 5%. That is again a massive improvement across time, that has come up from 92% to 95%. Then there is product availability as a percentage of total orders, that is has rose up to 88%. The point is that customer service expectations has increased a lot over the time, and customers are demanding more from the supply chain process. Then another significant important aspect of logistics is that it is an integral part of company strategy. How it is an integral part of company strategy is that with globalization, with more trade agreements, with companies and firms expanding and taking their operations offshore, and with attempts, for example, Toyota company has 25 production facilities across the globe. Their production facility for Camry or something is located in USA someplace, and that production facility is there to produce the car so that the time of delivery can be reduced. Now that certain parts of that production facility are followed through just-in-time inventory mechanism, and they are supplied from Japan. So the order of the raw material, certain parts that are to be placed in that car, which is being assembled in USA, the items and parts are traveling from Japan to that place and they are assembled. Now why is that? To reduce the delivery time. So as a whole part of the company strategy, one aspect is to ensure customer satisfaction, because you need to deliver customer the product in time and at the place where they need it, right? So, and further it also would reduce the cost as well, cost of the total good being supplied. And this happens with the expansion of corporations, multinational corporations, with globalization, with freer trade agreements, with more foreign direct investment across the globe. Now that is to expand to generate more revenues. With larger markets, obviously that would mean to supply a larger market would demand more from the supply chain process. from logistics management, right? So the logistics department or the logistician or the supply chain process would have to be more effective and more efficient in order to supply a larger market. And for that, production facilities are being located across the globe, and firms are expanding. In terms of production facilities, they can either produce locally and then export globally, or they can even move out their production facilities in different locations. Just like, for example, I gave you example of Toyota, or there is Coca-Cola and many multinational companies of Procter and Gamble and Nestle who have expanded to across the globe to provide the products and services and to generate more revenue, because the sole purpose of any business entity is profit. Profits are basically signals to producers. Wherever there are profits, they would move in that direction. They would start that business venture. Now, to optimize to optimize is to increase the profits, because if logistics management, which is, we already discussed that it is significant. One reason is because it is significant because it contributes lots of cost, to a big chunk of cost to the total cost of goods sold. So if it contributes that much, that means in order to optimize the supply chain process, you would automatically increase your profits because your costs would go down. So that is why it is a very important aspect. So this point also highlights the significance of logistics management in current times. Now, another significance is that which is again associated to the last part that we were discussing, that firms are expanding to tap bigger markets. Their market shares are expanding, their facilities are expanding, their warehousing facilities are expanding. So based on that, the reason is that logistics lines are lengthening with globalization, and firms often go global to cut costs. One aspect that I discussed earlier is that they go global to acquire more market share, right? That is in terms of getting the market. But in that case, they can produce locally and just supply globally. Another aspect is that they might go global to meet their customer on time, right? For example, I discussed the example of Toyota. They want to reduce their delivery time, and they wanted to install a production facility over there. Then you might install a production facility in cases where the product is perishable, and if it is produced at a longer distance and it is moved over there, the cost of transportation would be higher because it is perishable and needs a certain type of environment, and then again the total expiry date would go down. That is why certain types of, let's assume certain types of, for example, yogurt cannot be exported. It is very difficult to export that, right, with such an expiry date. But then that is why it is a need that a production facility to may be installed in a country. If it is, for example, Nestle, they would install a production facility for production of yogurt. Now, the another reason for going global is to cut costs. You go closer to the raw material source. If raw material is cheaper in a certain country and it is cheaper to produce over there rather to import the raw material and then produce, the production facility would be shifted in that region. There is another important factor of production, which is labor. Wherever the labor is skilled and cheap, and it depends on the industry whether they need unskilled labor or skilled labor. But the point is that moving to China and moving to India is one of the reasons is that the labor is, apart from the friendly business environment and all those reasons, and established supply chain networks, transportation and export networks, one of the reasons is that labor is cheaper over there, and in many cases they are skilled labor. So that would be the facilities would shift to China. Many firms, many electronics industries, most of the electronic products across the globe are being produced in China. From the manufacturers of UK, USA and developed countries and Japan, they are being produced in China because the cost of production is lower over there. That is why they go global to cut costs. Globalized trade, further the globalization has also been pushed by trade agreements across the countries, with many countries realizing that trade or exporting is one of the prime source of strengthening the economy. More you export, the better you would be at a better standing in economic standing across the globe. Now, secondly, trade agreements also play a part, and then inflow of financial and economic liberalization again play an important aspect in this globalization and globalized trade. Then there is the concept of local versus long distance supply, because in terms of supply, firm might choose to bring in the raw material from far away external sources and produce locally. This point, local versus long distance supply, is directly associated to produce and sell globally versus produce locally and sell internationally. Because if you produce locally and sell internationally, you would be having a long distance supply. Because you are bringing in the raw material from different sources, you are producing it, and then you are exporting it across the globe, or whatever your markets you are tapping into. And on the other hand, there is local supply, in which case that you are only supplying to your own region. That would be a smaller firm, of course, but then you can also produce and sell globally. For example, most of the multinationals, like for example Toyota and Honda and other like Mitsubishi and Daewoo and Nestle and Procter and Gamble, and these all of these firms are producing globally now. They are located, their production facilities are located in different regions, and in those different regions they are either located over there because of being closer to the raw material or the supplies that they need, or they are over there because of low production costs available or friendlier business environment, or they are producing over there in order to ensure timely delivery to their customers. So that is one of the reason is the logistic lines are lengthening. Then an increase in logistic costs against decrease in labor and material costs. This is an important aspect. We would have a graphical representation of this in an image sort of thing in the next slide. I would discuss this point later. Now, logistics is a key to trade and an increased standard of living, because as we said earlier, in older times people had a limited basket. Whatever they could produce, they could consume. With expansion of trade and logistics facilities, that basket is expanding. And in current times, I guess that basket is of like a significant size, because multiple products can be acquired and purchased in terms of ease of access to those products, in terms of those products can be delivered to you, and in terms of prices also. Now, that is the reason why law of comparative advantage exists, because now countries can specialize, economies can specialize in the specific products in which they have the lowest opportunity cost, and they can import rest of the items. So the basket has already expanded. And further, with the flow of information that I was discussing earlier, with flow of information in terms of you can say latest fashions and trends, with expansion of social media and print media and electronic media, we are very well aware of what is being produced in Japan, what is being produced in China, what is being produced in USA. Now, since we have access to that information, so that would automatically mean that we can use those products, and our baskets have expanded. So another one reasons why the significance of logistics management has increased over time is that with trade and the standard of living has increased, and with that increasing standard of living, the expectations of people have increased, and with those increase in expectations, the burden on the shoulders of supply chain process has also increased. Now, I was discussing in the previous point, when I said that logistic lines are lengthening, I discussed an increase in logistic costs against decrease in labor and material costs. Now, that is a trade-off which is represented in this imagery. Now, it is a trade-off in a sense that with going global, you have a trade-off, because you are going global for the purpose of tapping low cost of labor, and for the purpose of tapping, for example, you can say cheaper sources of raw material. That is why you are going global. But once you are going global, that would increase the cost of logistics, and this is exactly what is represented in this image. The profits have expanded. The profits have expanded with going global, because now you can, this is sort of a survey of multinational firms which go global across the board, and before and after going global, and it can be seen that their profits have expanded because now they can tap more markets and they can utilize economies of scale. Then the general administration costs have not changed, and marketing costs might have increased, but with usage of electronic and print media and cheaper sources of marketing, that cost is almost similar. Then the logistic costs have increased. I said there is a trade-off between tapping cheaper labor and raw material against logistic costs. The overheads are increased, but with going global, there is a role of tariffs also, which was not previously a part of you can say the whole costing system. Cost of material might reduce if you are going towards cheaper raw material, or if you are going towards cheaper labor, then the cost of labor would reduce. So there is a trade-off between reducing material and labor cost with logistic cost. This is an interesting schematic representation showing why supply chain lines are lengthening, because countries are going global in that sense to tap better opportunities. And then another important aspect of why logistics is so significant for any supply chain or any business mechanism or existence of business entity, because there are 4 types of customer value. One is possession value, then there is form value or place value, and time value. You can also write down, you can also mention as place utility, time utility, because utility is the level of satisfaction a customer gets, that is like value the customer derives from it. So possession utility is the value or usefulness that comes from customer being able to possess that product. Once that product is in the hand of that customer, that is possession value. Once I possess that product, that is possession value. This value is created by marketing and sales. Once they place the product in your hands, that is possession value. They say that possession value has been created. The customer can derive value from that, extract value or utility from that, he is satisfied. Then there is form utility or form value. Form utility that can be used by the customer and is of value to the customer. In which form? The shape of the product, the design of the product, the type of the product. That is form value. That goes towards production. Right? How they produce that product, how that product is in the hands of the customer, what is the type of that product. So that is form value, that is created by manufacturing. Right? Possession value is created by marketing or sales, and form value is created by production or manufacturing. Then there is place value, that the product is available where the customer needs that product, the location. The product is available at the location where the customer wants it, where the customer asks for it. That is place value or location value. Then there is time value. Time value is that the product is available to the customer when he needs that product. I discussed these two earlier when we were talking about key activities. I discussed that earlier. Place value is created by transportation, a primary activity of a key activity of the total supply chain process. Time value is created by inventory management, another key aspect or key value of the total supply chain process. Now, if you see that out of these 4 values that are being created, that are summing up to create customer value, the last 2, place value and time value, are created by the logistics process. One is created by manufacturing, one is created by production and manufacturing, and last is created by logistics management process. The last 2 are created by logistics management process. So 50% of the customer value is actually created by logistics process. You see now, out of all the significance, the points I discussed under the significance of logistics, this is the most important aspect that highlights its importance. 50% customer value is created by logistics, right? Logistics management. Time value and place value. Time value through inventory management, place value through transportation. 50% of these values are created by logistics. And then I would Let us consider an example of an online clothing store, an online software store, or whatever. Currently, with expansion of internet or the social media, online businesses are booming. There are multiple online businesses competing with each other for products and services, for market share. But then they are not just competing with each other. They are also competing with the physical, typical brick and mortar sort of retail stores. Now, if we consider a clothing store, right, or if we consider a software house, let us consider a software delivery store, right? There is a physical store where software is sold, and then there is an online store where the software is sold. In the physical store, they would have DVDs and CDs, and they would have to maintain that physical facility. While in an online store, they just have to send the link for the software download. Now, the point is that the online store has an advantage of no cost to incur in terms of any physical location to occupy. It is an online store. Its cost is reduced by that, so it has an advantage over that. Physical store has an advantage to have a face with the customer, a face for the customer. When the customer needs it, it has a physical presence, right? It has a physical presence because whenever the customer wants to buy it immediately, they would go and purchase that product, right? That is how they have created time value. When the product is needed, the product is available, and place value, where it is available. But then how would online software store would compete with that physical store? What option does it have? They have also offered toll-free numbers for that. Another way of accessing. Toll-free number, you do not have to incur a cost while calling us. You just call us and we deliver that item to you, and you can pay at your doorstep. A CD can be delivered, that can be paid at doorstep. Same goes for all those retail stores running all those online shopping, you can say online shopping websites, or even on Facebook running in Pakistan. You place the order, the product is, you have to pay on delivery. Now they have added another type of value in terms of time value and place value. If I need the product immediately, I would go to a physical store, but I would incur a cost for that. But if I don't want to go to a physical store, I can place the order online and the product would be delivered, and I would pay at the moment to the person who's delivering, right? How convenient is that? Now both are competing with each other in different markets, but still the point is that both of them add certain type of value to the customer. And it depends on the needs and demands of the customers as well. But the point is that both of them incur a different type of logistic costs, right? And that is why, because of that value for the customer that both of them are creating, logistics is one of the significant aspect, because logistics is the source of this value. 50% of the total customer value is generated by logistics, and that is why it is, apart from all the other aspects that we have discussed, it is important, it is very significant. Logistics management is very significant for the total business entity. Now let us consider an example. I have been waiting for this example for for like 3-4 lectures. I wanted to discuss it. Now, you must have heard of Walmart, right? It is currently the biggest retail store across the globe. It's number one with billions of dollars of revenue, even the highest one, basically the biggest retail store across the globe. Now in the start, in 1987, it had a competitor, a Kmart. Kmart is still there, but I'll discuss that later. Now Kmart is, in 1987, Kmart had 26 billion of sales, and Walmart had $16 billion of sales. Kmart was located in the city, in the urban regions, while Walmart was located in you can say in urban areas across on the highways and in different locations. These are now the point is that they had a certain differing philosophies. The owners of the Kmart or the management of Kmart were focused on marketing. When the competition among them started, when Walmart began to expand towards urban locations also, it had to face the competition from Kmart. Their philosophies were different. Kmart was targeting marketing strategies, customer loyalty. They were trying to hit customer loyalty, right? They were targeting that. While Walmart was targeting logistics. The CEO of Walmart, for example, the CEO of Walmart actually tried to connect cash register through headquarters. It established an information system across all the chains, all the retail stores of Walmart chain, and so that it is connected to the headquarters. That information system related to the cash registers. Those cash registers were related to inventory also. Right? If anything goes out, that would reduce the total inventory to one in that specific store. Headquarter would be informed so that they can place orders specific to that outlet. Plus, they would also be used about the revenue generated from that sale, and that would also be accumulated as an information to the headquarters. All the cash registers were linked to the headquarters. One of the big moves was this one, and the second big move was having a trucking fleet and modern distribution centers. So, in other words, the CEO of Walmart, they say that he's also a logistician basically. That's why his focus was on improving the operations continuously. His focus was on supply chain. He wanted to improve the operational capability because he thought that if once you improve the operation, you reduce your costs. Once you reduce your costs, that can automatically become your competitive edge. So, in this case, what he did was that he focused on supply chain. He established a trucking fleet and facility. He established modern distribution centers in various locations so that they could provide immediate supplies to those retail outlets that he had. He connected the retail outlets to those distribution centers and the headquarters so that they can have timely information that what product is needed and where it is needed and how much order is to be placed. All the issues of all the major issues of the key activities of the supply chain process were involved in this whole mechanism that he established. And on the other hand, the Kmart was focused on customer loyalty. Kmart was focused on customer loyalty, and they were marketing rather than improving their operations or logistics management or managing their logistics. They were focusing on marketing. Now, with that, with expanding operations and with more competition, you can say the staff of Kmart were not trained enough to handle sophisticated inventory management systems, handling sophisticated logistics management system. There were even lawsuits against it in certain states where they were sued for overcharging or charging wrong products, because their inventory management system was not that efficient in terms as compared to Walmart, and secondly the staff was not that well trained. So that would mean that later on the costs in Walmart were significantly lower than the cost in Kmart, right? And additional thing, with that revamping of the whole supply chain process, Walmart expanded to become one of the largest retail stores in the whole world. So this is the difference. Their focus was on marketing. In 1987, they had Kmart was 26 billion worth of sales, while Walmart had 16 billion worth of sales, 10 billion less, and it had, for example, its focus was on supply chain, logistics, operations. And with that reduction in cost and with competing and establishing information systems strong enough to support its operations, establishing logistics and transport fleets strong enough to support its operations, it expanded and it became the largest store. While on the other hand, during that competition, while their marketing efforts were underway, they had certain lawsuits and they were left behind. So this Walmart actually won by using logistics management or supply chain management. That is why I wanted to discuss this example. This again shows the significance of supply chain management. This shows the significance of logistics in any business process. In any business process. Because improvement or optimizing the process of logistics actually reduces your costs. And once your operational costs are reduced, your profits will expand. Once your profits are expand, you would have more revenue for optimizing your logistics process or taking up other R&D or other activities. So this would be the most ideal way to achieve a stronger outcome. Then this is now let us move toward the scope of supply chain process or scope in this study. I want to focus on the scope of this study. Now there is a diagram in front of you where there is a focus company, then there are customers, and then there are customers, and on the left side you can see there are suppliers and there are suppliers. You acquire the product from suppliers, you convert that into a product, and you distribute it to the customers, and then your customers distribute it to their customers. The point is that our focus area is highlighted by the red line. Currently, the scope of the supply chain, the scope of supply chain in reality, in a multi-enterprise environment, all these boxes are multiple enterprises, is on the focus company, and we do not cross borders with customers to customers and with suppliers to suppliers. I would explain that relation again in next diagram. It would be more clear in that aspect. And the product and information flow is in both directions. Acquiring raw material, giving information, acquiring raw material, accumulating information, supplying the finished product, and accumulating information and producing, and all that being repeated. That is why in very early lectures we said that there are recurring activities in the whole supply chain process. Now you would understand what I'm trying to say in a much better sense in this slide. Now there is a firm. Most companies are working to create seamless processes within their own four walls. 47% companies, these are the results of a survey. 47% companies are trying to optimize their own operations within their own four walls. That is the firm which has purchasing, production, marketing, R&D, logistics, and finance and human resource and whatever. It is focusing on its own domain. It is not going beyond that domain, right? Then around 34% firms try to establish their relationships with their key suppliers. If you go one shape down, you would see that the firm is trying to establish its relationship with its key suppliers. Many companies house supply chain management and purchasing and focus on integration with their first tier suppliers. I'm only talking about our immediate supplier, the first tier supplier. So 34% companies are integrating their business processes with their first tier of suppliers. Then one box further down you would see that the firm is establishing relationships with its customers, key customers, only the primary customer, the first tier customer. 11% companies are trying to focus or integrate marketing and focus on integration with key customers, the first customer, not the customer's customer, but the customer. So 47% are focusing within their own walls, 34% are focusing on the firm, right, on the firm's relationship with its suppliers, the first tier supplier. 11% are focusing its relationship, its marketing, and integrating its marketing activities with its customers. Then around 8% firms integrate upstream and downstream in both directions. Downstream is with suppliers and upstream is your customers. Now 8% firms are doing the effort in both directions, integrating their you can say purchasing and focus of their supply chain on focus of their supply chain and purchasing on the supplier, and as well as focus of marketing on and integration of marketing with their customers. And if we talk about the next step, where you are integrating with key suppliers and then their suppliers, and you are integrating with key customers and their customers. Collaboration from supplier to customer is a vision not yet realized, because that would be a difficult process, right? So currently in reality the scope of supply chain is defined in this slide. In reality we expect to go beyond that, but in reality we do not. Most of the firms focus within their own domain, that is around 47%. For 34% focus on only their suppliers, 11% focus on their relationships with their, not relationships but integration with their marketing, integration with their customers, and 8% try to integrate with on both ends, right? So the next step is just sort of a dream, not a reality yet. And then supply chain is a multi-dimensional process. We have discussed that in various ways, but let's discuss it one more time. Supply chain management is like this triangle. One side of this triangle is interfunctional coordination. That in the last reality thing we saw that 47% firms are focusing on that. Then there is inter-organizational coordination, coordination with either your suppliers as well as your customers. That would be inter-organizational coordination. So, and the last thing is activity and process administration. That is the third side of this supply chain management. So the whole process of supply chain is actually these three sides of a triangle. If these three are well coordinated, then you can say your supply chain process is well managed. These are the things on which supply chain professionals would focus on. Now, I guess we are running out of time in this lecture, so let me summarize a few things that I discussed in these slides. The main focus of this lecture was on the significance of logistics. We discussed the significance in terms of cost, that a huge amount of cost is incurred in the whole logistics process. That's why it is very significant. And then we also discussed that because of many reasons, customers are demanding more of the supply chain professionals. They want delivery times, they want newer trends, they want desire mass customization for themselves. So that would mean that the significance of logistics has increased manifold. Then we also discussed that it can be an integral part of the company strategy, and then we discussed that the supply chain lines are lengthening with globalization. The supply chain lines are lengthening, and with globalization the standards of living are improving because the customer basket has expanded. Once the customer basket has expanded with products from multiple countries inside that basket, that would mean the supply lines has expanded also. And with companies going abroad or taking out their operations from their boundaries out to other countries, like for example Toyota company had 25 plants, so that would mean that the responsibility on supply chain has increased. One aim may be to serve more customers, one aim may be to capture more market share, one aim may be to cut costs and to reallocate to cheaper locations. Then we discussed that in terms of customer value, there are four values. There is possession value, which is added by marketing. There is a form value, which is added by manufacturing, and then there is time value, and there is place value, which is added by logistics. So logistics management actually add 50% of the total customer value. Then I gave you a very interesting example of Walmart and its competition with Kmart, and Walmart focused on logistics and operations and supply chain management, while Kmart's focus on marketing activities resulted into Walmart becoming the biggest retailer. Then I discussed the scope of supply chain in reality and theoretically, and I said that most of the firms are focusing on their interdepartmental coordination for efficiency of their supply chain systems, and around 34% firms are focusing with the relationship with their suppliers, immediate suppliers or key suppliers. Around 11% of the firms are focusing the relationship or integrating their marketing activities with their key customers, and only 8% of firms are integrating upstream and downstream with their customers and with their suppliers, key suppliers. And then the third phase, where the operations are integrated with your customers, marketing activities are integrated with customers, and your supply activities are integrated with your suppliers. That is still sort of a dream. I mean, that is very difficult to achieve. And in the end, I highlighted again this triangle of the supply chain, which is interfunctional coordination on one side, inter-organizational coordination on the other side, and the activity process and administration, that how these all activities are processed, is what forms the whole multi-dimensions of supply chain process. In the next lectures we will be discussing for example further things from this aspect. We have highlighted the importance of whole supply chain process. We would be moving on from this point onwards. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.